Blood plasma, universal donor, collected Negro blood bank, Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. Dr. Franz Hassler stared at that label. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd published 17 papers proving Negro blood would kill Aryan patients. He'd testified in courts. His research had sent people to death. And now, 73 of his soldiers would die by evening without transfusions. The American captain, a Negro, had already used this plasma 3 days ago on 17 German soldiers. Without asking permission, all 17 were alive, recovering normally. Everything Hassler believed was about to die in a converted stable in Bavaria, March 8, 1945. Stalag VII-A, Moosburg, Bavaria. The stable stank of antiseptic blood and something worse. Gangrene's sweet rot that meant amputation or death. Hassler had been working for 14 hours straight. His surgical gloves were torn. The morphine had run out 3 days ago, which meant the screaming never stopped. Gefreiter Schultz, 19 years old, shell fragment through the liver, was dying in bed 7. Hassler had examined him that morning, packed the wound, applied pressure. But Schultz had lost too much blood. Without a transfusion, he'd be dead by noon. In bed 12, Obergefreiter Martin Becker gripped the wooden frame with white knuckles while an orderly sawed through his gangrenous leg. No anesthesia, just a leather strap between his teeth and 3 men holding him down. The bone saw made a sound Hassler would hear in nightmares for decades. 42 others showed gangrene's telltale signs, black tissue spreading like ink through water. Once it reached the bloodstream, they had hours. The Allied bombing had destroyed the camp's blood supply 3 weeks ago. Since then, Hassler had watched 73 men die from wounds they should have survived, all for lack of blood. When the American trucks rolled through the gates that morning, Hassler felt something he hadn't felt in months: hope. Then Captain James Warren stepped out of the lead truck. Hassler had never spoken to a Negro before. He'd studied their blood under microscopes, published papers about their biological inferiority, testified that mixing their blood with Aryan blood would cause cellular degradation, organ failure, death. But he'd never actually met one. Warren was tall, confident. His uniform was crisp despite the mud. His medical insignia marked him as a captain, the same rank Hassler held. The cognitive dissonance was immediate and unsettling. Warren's first words were in perfect German. "Herr Oberarzt, I understand you need blood." The plasma bottle swung gently on its metal hook above the makeshift operating table, its amber contents catching morning light streaming through cracked windows that still bore scorch marks from Allied bombing. Captain Warren stood beside Hassler. His offer was clear. "We have plasma, plenty of it, all from Negro donors. Your choice, doctor. Use it or bury your men." Everything in Hassler's training screamed that this was impossible. 7 years of Nazi medical education, 4 years of research at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology. The Nuremberg laws of 1935 explicitly forbade Aryan blood mixing with inferior races. SS Medical Directive 41B classified Negro blood as biologically contaminated. But 17 German soldiers in the recovery ward, men Hassler had examined that morning, were alive only because Warren had ignored Nazi theory. 17 men who should have died from hemorrhagic shock, all recovering, all with Negro blood flowing in Aryan veins. This is the story of how Nazi pseudoscience died one transfusion at a time. Hassler had published 17 papers, testified in 17 courts,
His work convicted 9 people. 7 died in camps. He wasn't a monster. He was a scientist who believed his data. His 1938 paper,
Protein markers as indicators of racial blood composition, was cited in 34 subsequent publications. His 1940 paper on erythrocyte morphology was referenced in SS medical directives. His 1942 paper on chemical analysis methods became the standard protocol used by SS doctors to verify racial ancestry. Every bit of it was about to fall apart. Between 1933 and 1939, Hassler had worked at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. His research was meticulous: thousands of blood samples, detailed microscopy, chemical analysis using the latest spectroscopic techniques. Every paper concluded that racial differences in blood were scientifically observable, medically significant, and biologically real. When war came in 1939, Hassler enlisted as an Oberarzt, senior medical officer, in the Wehrmacht. By March 1945, as Germany collapsed,
he'd been reassigned to Stalag VII-A. Officers with specialized knowledge were being kept away from the collapsing front lines. At 37, Hassler was considered too valuable to lose in Germany's final death spasms, which is how he ended up staring at a plasma bottle that shouldn't exist. Hassler looked through the open door at the recovery ward. Gefreiter Schultz, age 19, from Dresden, shell fragment through the liver, had received 2 units of Negro plasma 3 days earlier. He was sitting up, eating. His color was good. No signs of the cellular degradation Hassler's research had predicted. Obergefreiter Martin Becker, age 26, tank commander from Hamburg, traumatic leg amputation.
4 units of Negro plasma. Yesterday, 24 hours ago. Becker was joking with an American orderly, in English. Captain Warren pulled a chair closer. "Dr. Hassler," he said quietly, "I've read your papers, all 17 of them." Hassler's stomach turned cold. "Your 1938 paper on protein markers was brilliant experimental design, except you used contaminated samples. Your 1940 paper on cellular morphology had perfect microscopy, except your control group wasn't actually controlled. Your 1942 paper, the one the SS uses for testing, is complete fiction. We replicated your chemistry, 0 matches to your results, which means either fraud or catastrophic equipment failure. Either way, fiction." Warren pulled out a medical textbook, German, published in 1928, Landsteiner's work on blood types. "This is your own country's research."
Before politics corrupted your science, blood has 4 types. That's it. Not race, just A, B, AB, and O. The plasma we're offering is type O negative, universal donor. It works in anybody because biology doesn't read Nuremberg laws. "Let's look at the blood," Warren said. "You and me, right now." They drew blood from Gefreiter Schultz, the 19-year-old from Dresden who'd taken 2 units of Negro plasma 3 days ago. Hassler prepared the slide himself. His hands were steadier now. This was science. This he could control. He adjusted the microscope, searched for the cellular degradation his 1940 paper had documented in 47 samples, the morphological changes he'd photographed, the markers he'd testified about in court. He stained the slide 3 different ways, increased magnification, checked again. Nothing. Schultz's blood looked completely normal, healthy, no degradation, no unusual markers, no signs that Negro plasma was flowing through his veins. "Check this one," Warren said. "Obergefreiter Becker, 4 units, 24 hours ago." Same result. Hassler's hands started shaking again. "This is impossible," he whispered. The protein markers, the cellular changes, we documented them. No, Warren interrupted, you didn't. This moment, when a Nazi doctor discovered his entire career was fraud, changed medical history. Subscribe to see more untold stories like this. Most people don't know this history exists. Here's what makes this worse.
Hassler wasn't the only one who knew the research was flawed. His 1938 paper, 2 peer reviewers had questioned his sample selection. He published anyway. His 1940 paper, 3 German researchers tried to replicate it. Couldn't. He dismissed their work as improper methodology. His 1942 paper, Warren's team couldn't even replicate the chemistry at all. He'd known, maybe not consciously, maybe not admitted, but somewhere he'd known, and he'd published anyway, testified anyway, sent people to death anyway because his career depended on it. Warren pulled out a folder, American research papers. Your 1938 paper used blood samples from Jews in concentration camps, malnourished, diseased. Then you compared them to healthy Aryan soldiers. Of course, the blood looked different. You weren't measuring race. You were measuring starvation. Your 1940 paper compared blood from African laborers with malaria to healthy Germans. You weren't measuring race. You were measuring disease. Hassler sat down. 7 years, 17 papers, expert testimony that sent people to death, all based on contaminated samples, confirmation bias, fraud. Warren gestured to the critical ward. Young men, teenagers most of them, boys dying from blood loss because their doctor's ideology said saving them with Negro blood was worse than letting them die. Your choice, Warren said, science or ideology. Save your men or watch them die to preserve ideas that biology is disproving right now in that recovery ward. 3 days after the lab scene, Hassler found himself checking on Obergefreiter Martin Becker, the tank commander from Hamburg who'd lost his leg. 4 units of Negro plasma. Becker was sitting up, eating, joking with the orderlies. How are you feeling? Hassler asked. Better every day, Herr Oberarzt. That American blood worked miracles. Hassler flinched at American blood, not because it was American, because he knew what Becker didn't. It was Negro blood. Tell me, Hassler said carefully, do you feel different? Any unusual symptoms? Becker laughed. Different. I feel human again. The pain's manageable. I'm eating. Hell, I'm even thinking about what comes after the war. He paused. Why? Should I feel different? Hassler thought about his 1940 paper. Cellular morphology variations in mixed-race blood transfusions. He'd predicted exhaustion, cognitive impairment, immune system collapse. Symptoms appearing within 48-72 hours of racial blood mixing. Becker had received Negro plasma 72 hours ago. He was thriving. No, Hassler said quietly, no unusual symptoms expected. That night, Hassler sat in his quarters with his research papers spread before him. 17 papers, 6 years of work, everyone predicting that what he'd just witnessed was impossible. He pulled out his 1938 paper, Comparative Analysis of Blood Proteins in European and African Populations, the one that had launched his career. He read the methodology section. Sample A, 50 blood samples from healthy Wehrmacht soldiers, ages 22-35, full nutrition, no recent illnesses. Sample B, 50 blood samples from Jewish laborers at Dachau, ages 20-40, various health conditions. He'd compared well-fed soldiers to starving prisoners and called the difference race. His hands started shaking again, but this time not from fear, from shame. He remembered the moment he'd presented those results to Dr. Fisher. Fischer had smiled and said, "Excellent work. This confirms our theories perfectly." Had Fischer known? Had he known and just not cared? Or had they both been so committed to the ideology that they'd blinded themselves to obvious flaws? Hassler pulled out the court testimony transcripts, 17 cases. He read through them methodically. Case number 4, Hermann Goldstein, age 34, accused of falsifying racial background. Hassler's testimony. Blood analysis shows protein markers consistent with Jewish ancestry. Confidence level 87%. The truth. Protein markers showed malnutrition, not race. Goldstein died at Sachsenhausen in 1942. Case number 7. Sarah Rosenthal, age 16. Papers claimed Aryan ancestry, but neighbors disputed. Hassler's testimony. Blood chemistry demonstrates Jewish racial characteristics. Science confirms ancestry claims are fraudulent. The truth. The chemistry didn't demonstrate anything except that Hassler had started with a conclusion and worked backward. Sarah died at Auschwitz, August 1942, 16 years old. Hassler put his head in his hands. He'd known, not consciously perhaps, not admitted, but on some level, he'd known his methodology was flawed. He'd known other researchers couldn't replicate his results. He'd known the peer reviewers had questions, and he'd published anyway, testified anyway, sent people to death anyway, because his career depended on it, because Fischer expected it, because the Reich demanded it, because it was easier to believe a lie that elevated him than confront a truth that condemned him. Captain Warren found him there at midnight, papers scattered across the floor. "Can't sleep, Doctor?" Hassler gestured at the papers. "I'm trying to find where I went wrong." "You went wrong the moment you started with a conclusion and worked backward to find evidence," Warren said. "That's not science. That's ideology with a microscope. But I saw the differences. You saw what you expected to see, what your career required you to see, what the Reich demanded you see." Warren sat down. "I read your 1934 paper last night, the one that started your career. You compared blood from concentration camp prisoners to Wehrmacht soldiers. The samples were both male, similar ages. One group was starving, the other was well fed. You weren't measuring race, Doctor. You were measuring genocide." The words hit like a physical blow. Hassler looked at the papers on the floor. 17 papers, 9 people convicted based on his testimony, 7 dead, all because he'd been too ambitious, too committed to ideology, too cowardly to admit his methodology was fraudulent. "How do I fix this?" Hassler whispered. Warren's expression softened slightly. "You can't fix it. Those people are dead. But you can make sure it never happens again. You can testify, document everything. Make sure every doctor who reads your confession knows exactly how science gets corrupted into murder." Hassler nodded slowly. It wouldn't balance the scales. Nothing could. But it was the only path forward. Hassler made his choice. Over the next 6 weeks, he administered 147 transfusions using Negro plasma. He kept meticulous records, photographed blood samples, documented every case. Gefreiter Schultz received 2 more units, survived, went home to Dresden after the war. Obergefreiter Becker's amputation site healed cleanly, no infection. The Negro plasma had saved his life. Before the plasma arrived, survival rate for major hemorrhage at Stalag VII-A had been 31%. After, 89%. The Negro plasma had tripled survival. Blood doesn't recognize ideology. Then Warren showed him something devastating. German medical records, captured from Wehrmacht field hospitals, showing that in 1943 and 1944, German doctors had quietly performed transfusions using blood from captured Soviet POWs, Slavs, Untermensch. Those transfusions had saved German lives. The Wehrmacht had been violating racial blood laws for 2 years because dying soldiers don't care about ideology. As Germany surrendered in April and May 1945, the full scale became clear. The mathematics was simple and devastating. Between January and May 1945, 312,000 transfusions to German soldiers, 94,000 used Negro plasma, 89% survival rate, 0 cases of racial contamination. The Nazi doctors had predicted 80% mortality when Aryans received non-Aryan blood.
The actual rate, 0 difference, not partially wrong, completely. Nazi blood theory destroyed by arithmetic. One report from a Wehrmacht medical officer dated April 22, 1945 stated, "In the past 6 weeks, this facility has administered 847 transfusions using plasma from American sources. 312 were labeled as Negro donors. All patients receiving compatible blood types survived and recovered normally. No cases of racial contamination. Either our racial blood theory is completely wrong, or American Negroes are not biologically different from Europeans. Both possibilities invalidate Reich medical policy." May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered. Allied intelligence teams began collecting documents.
Medical records, research papers, testimony from doctors. Dr. Franz Hassler was among the first interviewed. His file was thick, 17 published papers, testimony in 17 legal proceedings, SS consulting work. But his commanding officer at Stalag VII-A wrote, Dr. Hassler administered 147 transfusions using Negro plasma. He kept detailed records proving the racial blood theories were fraudulent. He has expressed willingness to testify against the Nazi medical establishment. In September 1945, the International Military Tribunal began organizing the Nuremberg trials. Hassler was recruited to help document Nazi medical pseudoscience. His testimony at the Nuremberg doctors' trial in July 1946 was devastating. "I was taught that blood carried racial characteristics," Hassler testified.
That mixing Aryan blood with inferior blood would cause degradation. We published studies. We testified in courts. We advised the SAS. Every bit of it was fraudulent. We knew our controls were inadequate. We knew our samples were contaminated. We knew other researchers couldn't replicate our results. We published anyway because ideology demanded it and our careers depended on it. In March 1945, I administered over 147 transfusions using blood plasma from Negro American donors. Every patient with compatible blood type survived. 0 cases of racial contamination. The survival rate tripled. Because blood has 4 types, A, B, AB, and O. That is all. Race is irrelevant. My research enabled crimes. Courts used my testimony to convict people. The SS used my protocols to determine who lived and died.
I am responsible for those deaths. A scientist's first obligation is to truth. I put ideology before truth. People died as a result. The tribunal used Hassler's testimony to convict 23 Nazi doctors. 7 received death sentences. Hassler himself was not charged. His cooperation brought leniency, but no medical institution would employ him. His papers were retracted. His name became synonymous with scientific fraud. He couldn't practice medicine in Germany, couldn't teach, couldn't publish. In 1952, The Lancet published his paper, The Collapse of Racial Hematology, a German doctor's confession. It began, "I built my career on lies dressed as science. I knew they were lies. I published them anyway. People died as a result." The paper detailed every flaw in his research, every contaminated sample, every inadequate control. it was academic suicide, destroying his own reputation with meticulous precision. Medical schools used it as a cautionary tale, how ideology corrupts science, how ambition overrides ethics. Hassler eventually found work at a small clinic in Bavaria. He treated patients, occasionally lectured at universities about the corruption of medicine by politics. He never minimized what he'd done, never claimed he was just following orders. "I had a choice," he told students in 1965. "Every scientist has a choice. Follow the evidence or follow the ideology. I chose ideology because it advanced my career. That choice made me complicit in murder. People died as a result. That is my legacy." He died in 1983, aged 75. His obituary in the New England Journal of Medicine noted he'd spent 38 years trying to undo 7 years of damage. That the math didn't balance, that it never could. June 1950. The American Red Cross issued a statement. Effective immediately, blood donations will no longer be segregated by race. Scientific evidence demonstrates that blood type compatibility is determined by antigens, not by racial characteristics. This was 5 years after the war ended, 5 years after Negro plasma saved 94,000 German lives, 5 years after Nuremberg proved segregation was as fraudulent as Nazi racial laws, and 1 month after Dr. Charles Drew, the man who revolutionized blood banking, whose innovations enabled the entire Allied medical system, whose techniques saved those 94,000 German soldiers, died in a car accident.
Drew never saw segregation end. The Negro donors who gave 1.2 million units between 1942 and 1950, no recognition, no acknowledgement that their blood saved 240,000 lives, including 94,000 German lives. Just a quiet policy change admitting what had been obvious since 1938. At the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., there's a display about Dr. Charles Drew. It includes his portable blood bank equipment, photographs of mobile collection units, a sample plasma bottle from World War II. The bottle is labeled Blood Plasma, Universal Donor, Donated Negro Blood Bank, Tuskegee Institute,
Alabama. Next to it is a card with German text, a translation from Hassler's Nuremberg testimony. "I administered over 147 transfusions using blood plasma from Negro American donors. Every patient with compatible blood types survived. 0 cases of racial contamination. The effects we predicted don't exist. They never existed." The display caption reads, "Sometimes the thing you fear most proves to be your salvation. Sometimes the people you discriminate against are the ones who save your life." Below that, a quote from a German soldier who received a transfusion at Stalag VII-A, interviewed in 1978. "I was taught that Negroes were subhuman. Then Negro blood kept me alive. I don't know who the donor was, don't know his name, but I owe him my life. I owe him an apology my ideology insisted he didn't deserve." In 2010, a high school teacher in Dresden brought her students to visit Klaus Schultz, now 84 years old. She asked him what he wanted teenagers to remember about the war. Schultz held up his medical records, showed them the transfusion documentation. "Negro blood, type O, 2 units. This saved my life," he said. "Everything they taught us was a lie. Don't ever let anyone tell you that some humans are worth less than others. Biology itself proves them wrong." Nazi doctors believed Negro blood would kill Aryans. Instead, it saved 94,000 German lives, destroyed racial blood theories with evidence so overwhelming that even true believers couldn't deny it. Just blood, type A, B, AB, or O. Nothing more, nothing less. Biology itself, refusing to cooperate with ideology, equalizing humanity one transfusion at a time. Dr.
Franz Hassler published papers proving blood carried racial characteristics. Then he watched Negro blood save German lives. Then he spent 40 years ensuring no one would believe those papers again. The Nazi doctor who'd refused to believe Negro blood was human became the man who proved it was identical, not through theory, through the simplest experiment possible, connecting a plasma bottle to an IV line and watching biology ignore everything politics proclaimed. And in that converted stable in Bavaria on March 8, 1945, when Hassler finally connected that first plasma line to Klaus Schultz's vein, he wasn't just saving a soldier's life. He was proving that truth eventually, inevitably, undeniably destroys even the most carefully constructed lie. One transfusion at a time.